Welcome back to my writer's room, everyone. I am Matt Wallace, YouTube's resident angry writer, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to come hang out with me here in my angry, lonely little writerly sanctum. I always appreciate that, I really do. Me not being naked on the vlog is brought to you, as always, by our t-shirt of the day, and today I'm rocking Rowdy Roddy Piper. Always glad to be representing and keeping the memory alive. One of my idols, whether it was pro wrestling or horror movies or just general life philosophy, really. Roddy Piper was the man. And I miss him in small ways every day, I really do. I didn't know him personally, but he was one of those figures that loomed that large for me in culture and in the things that I was passionate about. So yeah, always happy to be representing Roddy. Got this out of my monthly pro wrestling crate. I just unboxed this month's on my pro wrestling channel, Matt F. and Wallace, if you want to go check that out. If you're into that kind of thing. If not, that's fine. I'm sure whatever your hobbies are much classier than pro wrestling. Yeah, so it is January 31st, 2018. It is Wednesday. It's hump day. You're making it, man. You haven't made it yet, but you're making it. You've made it to the middle of the week. Friday looms large and gloriously. Just keep trucking on. So Hamshackle, as you can see, he's waving goodbye. That's what these little lines are. They're indicating that his little hand is waving. He's waving goodbye to a ship setting sail on the tide, and that ship is the SS Stuff. They're not subtle analogies, people. I don't go that deep with my illustrations. But yeah, he's waving goodbye to some stuff that he's had to let go of from his youth. And that obviously pertains to what I'm going to talk about today, and hopefully I'll be more eloquent with my words than I am with my masterful illustrations here. I literally just scratched my head, so now my head is all red right there. I really need to be more cognizant of that. Also, my hair is doing like a weird devil's horn thing, because I haven't really messed with it. I don't know. I'm a mess and I apologize. But I just want to acknowledge that I'm going to have a big red spot on my forehead for most of the rest of today's vlog. So today I want to talk about not so much loss, but about letting go. This past weekend, I found myself at Barnes & Noble with my wife. I didn't find myself there. She drove us there because I asked her to. And by her, I mean her mother-in-law drove us there. She was there too. We all try to find ways and excuses to get out and move around during the weekend, even if we don't have something specific to do, because we're all doing Weight Watchers and activity is the whole whatever. It doesn't matter. We went to Barnes & Noble because I wanted to look at DVDs. I heard they had a buy one get one free bin going on, and Barnes & Noble generally has a good selection, so we went and checked it out. And in addition to the buy one get one free bin, they do some cool curation with their DVDs in their DVD section. They do like the AFI's top 100 films. They literally have all the DVDs and Blu-rays of all the top 100 AFI films in one section. And they also have a whole section of Criterion DVDs, which is amazing. If you're a DVD Blu-ray connoisseur or collector, you of course know about Criterion. They do these deluxe, like amazing editions of what they deem to be culturally significant or industry significant films. And they package them beautifully and remaster them and present them in as clean a print as possible. And they've been doing that for years, since before DVDs, I think. Did they start with Laserdiscs? It's been so long, I can't even remember. But anyway, so I went to go look at the bargain bin, but I ended up sitting on the floor in front of the Criterion section, kind of pouring through everything really emotionally. And I could hear my wife and my mother-in-law like somewhere in the background going, why is Matt sitting over there on the floor? And the reason that I was like sitting on the floor and the reason I got really emotional sitting in front of the Criterion DVD section is because it unexpectedly took me back to a part of my past and part of my life that I don't think about much these days. And it like caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting that. I just thought I was going to go look at some cheap DVDs to add to the collection, and I ended up on this serious like memory, nostalgia, emotional trip as some DVDs that I used to own and no longer own in the Criterion section caught my eye, and it got me thinking about that subject, about not so much loss, although that's part of it, but about letting go, and I'll explain why that is. So to tell this story, we have to go back. We have to go back into the long, long ago to a very different Matt Wallace. A Matt Wallace who did not have a 7-book deal with a major publisher, who did not have a marketing position at an international company, who was not a married man, who did not own his own home. A very different, younger, in his 20s, Matt Wallace, circa 2010, who had come out to LA from Tennessee to like really take a shot at this screenwriting thing he'd heard so much about. Not heard about. I'd been screenwriting for several years at that point. I'd just been working on like indie movies, and I've been working with Australian producers, and I tasted a little bit of money, but I wasn't getting to where I wanted to be. So I eventually decided with a friend of mine, Edward Earl Newton, who was a filmmaker, who I did Stranger Things with back in 2008, way before the current iteration of Stranger Things that you all know. We did our own show called Stranger Things, which was an anthology series that I worked on with him. So we both wanted to come out to LA and like do the thing where you come out to LA and you break into the industry. That very tried and true concept. The only problem was I was broke and living with my mother in Tennessee, and LA is very expensive. So in preparation to come out here, I sold virtually everything I owned at that point. You know, I sold my beloved basket-hilt claymore, symbol of my Scottish ancestry. I sold my guitar and amplifier. Sold my bed, I think. Sold my desk. Sold everything I could to gather funds to make it out here. And of course, my mother helped me as much as she possibly could, and she was amazing, and I'm forever grateful for that. But again, LA, very expensive city. The one thing that I refused to sell, the one thing I retained in this move, and when I came out here, folks, I had like nothing. We secured a shitty apartment in the valley that had, one bathroom and no air conditioning. And it was like that first summer I was here was like one of the hottest summers on record, as all summers are now because, global warming. But we had secured that. But beyond a means of shelter, like nothing. I had no bed, no desk to write at, no chair to sit at my non-existent desk, no car. Like I had nothing. But the one thing I didn't let go of was my DVD collection. This was it was by far the most valuable possession I had at that point. But I refused to even consider parting with that because as just a massive movie lover from the time I was, knee high to a whatever the hell, I spent so much time and so much loving care curating my DVD collection from the time that DVDs became a thing. I remember the first 2 DVDs I bought for that collection. It was a 2-disc special edition of Big Trouble in Little China, which I cherished and watched a million times and went through all the special features multiple times, and a limited edition Army of Darkness that had this really amazing, almost chromium cover of Bruce Campbell from the back, reaching up with his chainsaw arm. I've yet to been able to find that again. That was such a cool DVD. Anyway, from those 2 DVDs, I had built this massive collection that I'd poured so much not only money but time into, searching out all the best stuff. I had all this out of print Criterion stuff. I was huge into Criterion DVDs. I had all these out of print Criterion editions of Dead Ringers and RoboCop and Silence of the Lambs and all the Gilliam movies and Kurosawa, and just everything I loved was encapsulated in this DVD collection. I had a Region 2 player, and I would, I'd find European imports of stuff that wasn't even available over here. I was really deep into that. It was a huge thing to me, this DVD collection. And that was a big part of my 20s and a big part of my life. And when I quit wrestling and moved to Tennessee, and I was living with my mother, and I was focusing on trying to become a writer, I didn't really socialize for a few years there. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't date. I didn't really have friends locally. I focused on writing and trying to be a writer for real. And the only really recreation or social life I had was with that DVD collection. It meant a great deal to me. And I didn't even bring it out with me when I moved out here. My mother was kind enough to send my DVD collection by mail, one office box at a time through her work, so she didn't have to pay for the shipping because she's smart that way. I can say that 'cause she doesn't work there anymore. But anyway, one box at a time, she had mailed my DVD collection out to LA to me. So I had nothing. I had no bed and no desk and no chair and no car. But I had a pyramid of boxes with all my DVDs in them. That was all I had. And I still cherish that and clung to that. And in those early days here in LA, Edward and I remember watching a lot of those DVDs, and that was kind of our solace back then, was kind of sharing movies from our collections, from our various collections that we either hadn't seen before or didn't have or whatever. Like, that was a thing we did when we didn't have anywhere to go or any means to go anywhere. That was still a huge deal when I first moved out here, was that was the friend I brought with me. So that was how important that collection was to me. And I explain all that in such elaborate detail so that this sentence will have impact when I say it. 6 months after I moved to Los Angeles, I no longer owned a single DVD from that collection. Literally within that 6 months. That's not entirely true. I did hang on to a few things. It just sounded more dramatic that way. But 99% of my collection within the first 6 months, I had to part with because I had no money and we were in LA and it was very expensive and emergencies would come up and things would break down and bills would have to be paid. So a very begrudging, painful ritual for me personally became Edward and I in his car trekking to Amoeba Records in LA. We lived in Sherman Oaks, trekking to Amoeba Records because they bought DVDs, and we would sell parts of my collection whenever we needed, or I needed the money, to make rent or make bills on top of rent if I had rent covered, or just to eat, or whatever it was. Whenever I needed money and that I couldn't come up with any other way, I would gather up the rarest and most valuable parts of my DVD collection, all that beloved Criterion stuff of all those movies that meant so much to me, and we would travel to Amoeba Records and I would part with it for, 30, 40, 50, one time I think we got 100 and something when I did a really big run, bucks a shot, and that was one of the ways that I survived that very rigorous first year in Los Angeles, was to finally part with my DVD collection. And it was not easy for me. It was not easy to let those things go. They had meant so much to me. They represented such an investment of time and care and money. And they had gotten me through so many periods in my life when I needed the comfort of those things. It was very hard to let them go. But it was that or give up this existence in LA that we were trying so hard to eke out from the rock. And And I still remember the sting of it. Every single trip we made. There was one trip in particular where we took a bunch of stuff to Amoeba, and Edward parked in the Jack in the Box across the street from Amoeba Records because parking around there is such an impossibility. And we went to sell everything. And when we came back, the car had gotten towed. They had towed Edward's car out of the Jack in the Box parking lot. And I didn't have a car at the time, so that was pretty much also my car. So, we ended up getting 30 or 40 bucks or whatever at Amoeba. We had to call one of the only friends we had at the time in town who had a car to come get us. And he gratefully did, or, gratefully for us. And we had to take the money we had for Amoeba, add $300 to it, just to get Edward's car out of hock. And it was bad enough having to come up with a scratch to get his car out of hock. It was worse feeling like that trip had been invalidated and everything I just parted with had been completely invalidated. That day in particular, man, I felt that in my chest for a week. That was I remember that being one of the top 5 low points of that first year, and we had some very serious low points. And of course, you come to a place where you can look back on that kind of stuff with great nostalgia and romance because everything worked out. But you tend to forget how much it literally sucked at the time because there was no assurance that a future would come that would validate everything you went through. At the time, that was reality, man. Reality was we were broke and sweltering to death in the summer in the valley in an apartment with no air conditioning, and I had no bed to sleep on, and I was partying with the only things in the world that meant anything to me at the time. And that's a shitty reality to live inside of at the time. And I think that's what happened at Barnes & Noble when I was sitting on the floor staring at a copy of like Brazil or what everything that I used to own and don't have anymore. I was seeing through the nostalgia and the romance of now, and I actually was brought back to the reality of the moment as it happened. And those are two very different things. And they define loss and letting go in two very different ways. You know, at the time, it was bitter, not bittersweet, just bitter. I'm pushing 30 and I'm selling my prized DVDs just to eke out an existence with no certainty that anything is going to come out of this. It's not a place you want to be in life. And at that time, it sucked. Now I'm 35 and I'm doing okay, and I can buy any fucking Criterion DVD I want pretty much. And I can look back on this through the filter of nostalgia and romance, and I was paying my dues. I was investing in this thing. This was an investment in this thing. I can look back with that investment having paid off. But at the time, I didn't know that I was investing in anything. It could have been just chucking money and time and energy in the river for all I knew. So the way we perceive loss and the way we perceive letting go is really informed by the point in our lives at which we look at it. And at that moment, sitting on the carpet of Barnes & Noble, I think I lived through both. You know, it started with that bittersweet smile of nostalgia, and then really got shaken by the memory of actually living in that moment. And it was just such a strange juxtaposition between those two things. It was so stark. You know, you had this bittersweet, you know, warm feeling, and then you had this cold, resentful, bitter, panicked, you know, frightful, terrified of the future thing. And they both stem from viewing the same moment, but at different points in my life. And the starkness between them is really what caught me off guard and what made me want to talk about this. So here's the thing. At the end of the day, they were just things, man. They were just DVDs. They don't matter. All of it was replaceable. A lot of it I haven't bothered to replace because I haven't needed to, because streaming is now a thing. You know, my DVD collection was at a time before I could access any movie I wanted to on my laptop 24 hours a day. Times change and they invalidate things, and that's all those DVDs were. They were just replaceable things. However, the emotions and the memories that were attached to those things, those were very real, and those were valid, and those were important, and those weren't something to be sloughed off. And that's really what you have to look at when you think about loss versus letting go. It was the right thing to do, to let go of my DVD collection, and it was the right reason to do it. I was building something out here, and the foundation I laid selling DVDs for $30 a shot at Amoeba Records every couple of weeks, that foundation is what I built everything else that I have now on. You know, everything came from that. It was the right thing to do to let those go, and letting go is a healthy thing. The loss part didn't come from not having DVDs anymore. You know, that's privileged bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. The loss came from feeling like I was losing everything I had attached, the meaning that I had attached to those DVDs. That was what I felt like I lost. What they represented to me. You know, that's what loss is. And that's the difference between loss and letting go. And that's something that I think is an important distinction to make, because at many times throughout our life, we deal with those concepts, and we have to be able to parse out what is actual loss and what is letting go. Because if you think that losing is losing across the board, you're never going to be able to let go of anything, and letting go is a healthy thing to do. So know the difference. Know the difference between loss and letting go, I think, is the thesis point I'm trying to arrive at. And I hope that story in some way illustrated it for you. But yeah, hey, hit the comments. Let me know what you think about loss and letting go. What have you had to let go of in the past? What are the things you actually felt like you lost versus the things that you just let go of? And how do you make that distinction for yourself? Always interested to hear about it. So let me know. Hit the comments. Let me know about loss and letting go from your perspective. That's going to be it for this hump day, folks, for this middle of the week vlog. It's also the last day of the month. January is almost over. February begins tomorrow. The first month of 2018 is already almost over. How bananas is that? Like, where the time is just rushing lately. I don't know if that's because of the phase of life I'm in, because of how busy I am, or what that is, but it really genuinely does seem like time is just, it's flowing around my ankles faster than I can grab fish from it. That wasn't my best metaphor, admittedly. Anyway, please like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the video, what you're thinking of the vlog. Ask me a question. Suggest a topic you'd like me to talk about. I just like hearing from you. So please, leave me a comment. I'll be back with you until we all make it to the end of the week. Until that happens, I am Matt Wallace, and I will see you all tomorrow.